we're starting a brand new series, Pro Tip, and for the next 3 weeks, we're going to be diving into this, and really the goal to be the subtitle of this, to learn the one thing that can make you better at everything in life. The one thing that if you learn this, it will make you a better friend, it will make you better at relationships, it will help you avoid a lot of baggage and mistakes along the way, and this is a gift that not a lot of people are born with, but anybody can attain. And so we're going to get into that this week. I'm super excited. But let me start by posing a question to you. What if you were the smartest person alive? Would that solve all your problems? Because you could smart your way out of any problems that come your way. What if you were the smartest person to ever live? Who do you think is the smartest person, by the way? They're not in this room, unfortunately. King Solomon in the Bible was probably the wisest dude, but I'm asking about smarts. Definitely not Kim Kardashian. All right. Elon Musk is up there. Let me. How about this? Let me tell you about somebody who has like the biggest, probably most brain power of anybody that's lived in modern history that we know of. Okay, it's not Einstein. It's not Elon Musk. This person's expected IQ, intelligence quotient, is estimated to be nearly 2 times of both of those. Einstein's was at 160, approaching 300 for the smartest man ever. Do you guys know who this person is? Okay, I'll give you some clues. He could read the New York Times by the age of 1.5. He attended Harvard at age 11, and he was ultimately fluent in about 25 different languages. His name was William James Sidis. Probably never heard of him. You can Google him. William James Sidis, that's spelled S-I-D-I-S. And shockingly, his story is actually quite tragic. So let me tell you about it. While he had all those accomplishments and smarts from a young age, he wanted to get out of the limelight by the time he was in early adulthood. And he was tired of everybody expecting so much of him. He was tired of a lot of pieces that were being written about him. And so he got into some trouble with the law. He was arrested at 21 for wild behavior at a political event. He eventually started living under various aliases because he didn't want people to figure out who he was. And he tragically died at the young age of 48 due to a brain aneurysm, which is kind of ironic because he was known as the smartest person ever. And by all available data, he actually lived to figure some things out later into adulthood and to live a pretty good life. But being smart did not save him from everything. Being smart did not just mean that he could easily walk through life. And we hear stories like this, and we ask questions like, how can you know so much and yet not be successful in every way? How can you know so much, be so smart, and yet not be successful in every area of life? You could be whatever you wanted to be. You could be smart enough to figure out what makes you happy. You could be smart enough to figure out how to be a pro in anything, how to fix your family, how to calm your mind, how to go pro in just about anything. And the real question is, why doesn't being smart fix everything? Right. As somebody who likes to fancy himself as an analytic person, who likes to think through the issues and figure stuff out, sometimes I can buy into the temptation that being smart would just kind of fix everything. Because you would know how to get your way out of any sticky situation. You know how to fix every relationship. You know all of the things. But being smart is not everything, which for some of us in the room is good news. For some, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. They just went, what? I'm just kidding again. Just kidding. Sorry. Are you guys awake? Okay. I'm going to move on. Just want to make sure you were listening. See, with almost every problem we face in life, being smart is rarely going to scratch the surface to get you out of the situations or to make the situation better. There's one thing that separates the pros from the amateurs when it comes to life. And the people who experience real peace, who live great stories, who can lean into their most important friendships, have developed one thing that makes them better at life than most everybody else around them. It's the thing that stands in the gap between what you know and what to do with what you know. Because let me ask you a question. How many of you guys know that soda is bad for you? How many of you know that excessive amounts of sugar in general are not great for you? How many of you did that stop all your Christmas holiday eating? How many of you knowing that sugar is bad for you stopped you from eating a lot of it around the holidays? If you're anything like me, there's all kinds of candy around the house and goodies and cookies and brownies and ice cream and all the things, and I eat all of them in excess. I know I shouldn't, but there's a gap between what I know and what I should do with what I know. So this one thing stands in the gap between those two things. And if intelligent quotient is you're smart, there's anybody heard of emotional quotient, EQ? It's like how it's basically a social skills test, or how well you can manage your emotions. There's one that I'm just going to call the WQ, and that is the wisdom quotient. Okay? Or maybe the GWQ, the godly wisdom quotient, because there's worldly wisdom and there's godly wisdom. But wisdom, I think, and I'm going to try to prove it to you over the next 3 weeks, wisdom is, I think, the one thing that everybody could learn that would stand in the gap between what you know and what you do with what you know. Being smart is not the most important thing in life. Not everybody has the same level of smartness, but anybody can learn the skill of becoming wise. And it's an important skill to have. Think about it this way. Let's say if I were to flip a coin, and one side of the coin was the IQ, the intelligent quotient, and the other side of the coin was the wisdom quotient, the WQ, then on each situation, there's an IQ and a WQ required. Let me give you a few situations. Like, for example, let's say your friend is saying something sarcastic to you, and you are a person of quick wit and could snap back with a quick response to put them in their place. And sometimes you do, and that feels great, doesn't it? Until you realize that actually really hurt their feelings later, and you have a big emotional friendship conflict for weeks because of it. Anybody been there? Now, on the one side, what you sarcastically said in response might have been true, but was it wise to say in that moment? Well, let me give you another situation, okay? Maybe you disagree with your mom about something, and you could give her all the reasons of why she's wrong and how she doesn't understand things because of how the world is today as opposed to when she was your age, and you could tell her all those things, and you could prove your point, but the other side of that coin, the wisdom quotient, would say, but I need to respect my mom, and I need to do as she asks. See, wisdom knows when to say what and how to say it. One last example. Let's say that you're around some younger kids. How many of you guys have younger siblings? How many of you work with younger kids, like whether it's in the nursery or maybe you've been to camp? We were talking about this before gathering with a few students. You've been to camp and you've worked with younger kids. Maybe it can be pretty tempting to correct everything that they say that's absolutely wrong, because kids say really wrong things a lot, and you could easily put them in their place because it's a place where you actually have more smarts than those people, and you could tell them how it is, or you could lovingly walk alongside them and show them compassion and love and kindness, right? There's a difference between your wisdom quotient and your intelligence quotient, right? And being able to know the difference and when to use which is incredibly important in life. So not to shame anybody, but you all probably know somebody who's incredibly gifted at something or a pro at something, and they've completely messed up a lot of things in their personal life. You guys know anybody like that? You're a professional what? Professional eater? Especially when it comes to Reese's? Yeah. I totally lost my train of thought now. Now I'm thinking of Reese's peanut butter cups, like the half-pound ones. Okay, wisdom, on the other hand, knows that it doesn't know everything, okay? So anybody can, not everybody is smart, right? But anybody can learn to be wise. And wisdom knows that it doesn't know everything. In other words, there's a sense of humility to those who are wise. And that humility is attractive because when you see people who are humble, who you probably know they know more than you, but they choose not to flex that. They choose to be kind and to not try to put anybody in their place. There's a humility to them. We're attracted to humble people because they make us feel good about ourselves, right? Nobody wants to be around an arrogant person, right? Like we all want to be around people that are kind and people who are humble. And so wisdom is self-controlled enough and willing enough to give up the short-term pleasures for long-term for long-term satisfaction. Wisdom has the experience and it saves them time and time again. Because, and I can tell you in my own personal life, I've been fortunate to have a lot of wise people around me growing up. I had a good community. I grew up in a good church, had a lot of people older and wiser than me that looked out for me and that passed wisdom down. And I was able to avoid a lot of mistakes and baggage in my life because I listened to their mistakes and I chose not to do that. On the other side of that coin, I can tell you there's a lot of times in my life where I have made stupid mistakes that I wish I could take back, that I wish I didn't have to learn the hard way. And I can tell you, having experienced both things, it is much better in life to learn from somebody else's mistakes than your own. You guys following? It's much better, and it works out much better for you in the long term. You carry around less baggage that you have to work through later when you listen to the wisdom of those who came before you, rather than learning the hard way, what it means to be wise and what the wise decisions are in life. Now, if there's a chance that we can learn godly wisdom in our life and apply it, because if God is the designer, if he's the one who created everything, he knows how everything was designed to be. And so if God is the designer, we should listen to how the world ought to be, how it ought to be lived. And so for us, wisdom would then be to take what God has handed down to us and follow that. And if we could do that, and I can tell you that it has proved to be true time and time again in every circumstance. Culture changes. The wisdom of the world is fleeting and changes with every generation. But what God has said is true, has shown itself to be wise for generations. And so it would be prudent of us to follow that wisdom over the wisdom of the world today. And so we're going to look into what Solomon had to say in the book of Proverbs. And for those of you who don't know, Solomon was the third king of Israel. He was followed after his father's footsteps, King David, who conquered Goliath, who was known as probably the greatest king of Israel. He was known as the man after God's own heart. Solomon was not actually the heir to the throne. He was not the oldest. But the way God moved, Solomon happened to be the one to become king next. And so there's a lot about his story, but he wrote down a lot of wisdom in a handful of writings in the Old Testament, Song of Solomon, Ecclesiastes, and Proverbs, probably what he's most known for. And in the book of Proverbs, he writes down this in chapter 1, verse 7. He says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction." Now, what you have to understand about Proverbs is Proverbs are not promises. Okay? In other parts of the Bible, there's direct promises that God gives to his people. He promises the nation of Israel he's going to deliver them out of slavery and into the promised land. He fulfills that. He promises that he's going to return them from exile in Babylon back to Jerusalem, to their home. He does that. He promises them that he's going to send a Messiah. He does that. And Jesus promises he's going to be back again. But Proverbs are not promises. Proverbs are general truths about life. General truths about life that if we were to follow, then we would be better for it. Perfect example. There's a proverb that says, "Raise a child in the way he should go, and when he's old, he will not turn from it." What that's saying is, you should instill the values in your children that you want them to have, and you do that by living it out and also by not sparing the rod of discipline, right? You train a child in the way they should go, and when they're old, they won't turn from it. And by and large, that happens to be true. But that there is a thing called free will, and even those, you probably know people like this who were raised in a great home, great Christian family, and then they grew older and they walked away from the faith. So it's not always true, but it's a general truth. And statistically, most people that turn away from the faith, who grew up in the faith, do come back eventually. So, but that's a general truth in life. And right here, Solomon is saying that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. And fools despise wisdom and instruction. So let's focus in on the word fear here for a second. The fear of the Lord, what's that mean? It doesn't mean terrified in the sense that maybe you're thinking of. If you think about it this way, let's say, Callie, you could meet with Justin Bieber. You could sit across from the coffee table and you could just learn all kinds of life stories from Justin Bieber. Now, when you go to that coffee date, you're going to be like shaking, and especially if he brings his wife along, right? And you're going to be like in awe, right? And you're going to be scared of what to say, and like you don't want to come across wrong, and you're going to want to listen, right? You're not going to want to offend, right? It's that kind of fear, right? Live with the fear of God. It's like this awe and amazement. And also knowing that you're human and he's God, he could strike you down at any time, right? So there's like a healthy fear. I love the analogy in the Chronicles of Narnia where they're talking to Aslan, who represents Jesus, and they're asking, well, they're talking about him, and they're like, well, he's a lion. Is he safe? And those who know him go, well, of course he's not safe. He's a lion. But he is good. And so this fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. It's that sense of humility that he's greater than I, and I should listen to him. I should have awe and reverence and amazement. It means to be in awe or amazed by God. And when you respect and honor and fear God, your trust in him grows. So this emotional, mental, and spiritual shift is everything. Think about it. If you're prideful, in other words, if you don't heed wisdom or instruction very well, then when wisdom comes your way, will you be able to recognize it? If you're prideful and you don't take wisdom well, then when wisdom does come your way, wisdom that would change your life, will you recognize it as wise? Or will you see it as foolish because you don't know what wise is? Does that make sense? The beginning of wisdom happens when we start with the fear of the Lord, right? It's to be humble enough to acknowledge that you don't know everything, that your gut is not always right, and that your feelings may sometimes deceive you. They might lead you astray, and you need guidance from the one who loves you and who created you. That is what it means to have wisdom. And so it's all about perspective, and it's gained over time. This is why you generally think about people as older than yourself when you think of people who are wise. Because wisdom comes with experience, and not just any experience. There's a difference. It's not just more experiences that makes you wiser, it is evaluated experiences. Let me give it to you this way. Let's take two different people, okay? Two different scenarios here. Okay, first one, you probably know somebody like this. This is the person who gets in a relationship and they're super over the moon about them. It's super mushy. They're like, they're the one for me, ride or die for life. I'm going to marry this person. We're going to live happily ever after, right? And then for whatever reason, it doesn't last, right? And then they're heartbroken. They think, why would they do that? Or they, that if they would just get it together and then we could have made this work, and if they hadn't done that, and oh, woe is me. And then about 2 weeks later, they find the next Mr. Right, or the next Mrs. Right. And then it's like, it rinse and repeat. They find the one who turns out to not be the one because it's their fault, and they just weren't right. And then they find the next one, and they hop from relationship to relationship. Okay, person number two, like they are in a committed relationship, they love this person, they're going to make it work. It also, for whatever reason, doesn't last. That person takes time to grieve and to mourn, and they self-reflect. They go, what could I have done differently? Where did I go wrong? What are things that I could have changed to make things better? In other words, they don't go straight to blaming the other person. They go to self-reflection. They take the time to process it. And then when they're ready, they get back in the game again. Person number one lives a resentful, dysfunctional life with dysfunctional relationships, and they always blame all their dysfunction on everybody else. The second person eventually finds the right person, they get married, they live happily ever after. Clearly there's when I say happily ever after, I mean they figure out that in order to be happy, in order to truly get what they should out of a relationship, it means more to give than to receive. And God is at the forefront of that relationship. So there's two different types of people. You've probably seen them. One learns from their experience and changes what they can about themselves takes time to heal, and the other person continues to live a discontent, dysfunctional life. There's been plenty of times in my own life where I have just completely biffed it, made mistakes, done things in ways that I wish I could do differently, do over. If I had the opportunity to do it differently, I would. But at the time, I thought I knew everything, right? I grew up in kind of the Bible Belt in a Christian family, going to a Christian school, went to Bible college, and I took my entry exam, a Bible knowledge assessment, and I thought I knew a lot of stuff and realized very quickly into that test, I do not know anything about the Bible, even though I thought I did. So my perspective was I know all this, and then I was humbled and brought back down to here. And then after the first semester of Bible college, you're like, oh, I know everything, and you think you're back up here on the chart until it's just because you haven't learned how much you don't know yet. And then you're humbled again. And that's a process that happens over and over again, but if you were to scale out and look at that over the long term, you do actually grow. You learn more and you grow and you gain wisdom and knowledge. But everybody has a period of time, the honeymoon of knowledge, where they think they know everything, and then they're humbled. And I understand that God's wisdom always points me to what's best for me. And that's the lesson you just have to learn early. I took steps to intentionally meet with other people who are older and wiser than myself. I started reading the Bible with a mindset that the words of God could actually guide me in my life and my relationships. I started to pay attention to what God might be saying to me and acknowledge that God might actually be doing what's best for me despite what it seems like at times. And here's what I've come to believe, and I think that if you were to learn this, it would change your life and those around you. Wisdom is the one thing that can make you better at everything because it will help you discern to make not only the smartest decision, but the wisest decision. And that, over time, will pay off. Right? So, I would encourage you to find people that are maybe a life stage ahead of you or older that have been where you're at, and they can help you to learn from their successes and their mistakes. Find people like that. Find people, and I would encourage you, if you want to go pro in the area of wisdom in your life, then to start intentionally meeting with those older and wiser people in your life. Seek them out. When you meet with them, come prepared with questions. What can make you better at life? Come with the things you're struggling with. Come with the things you're doing great at. Just come ready to be humble and soak up wisdom. And secondly, look to the Bible. Look to what God has said to discover God's wisdom and what He has set out for your lives. So as you guys get ready to go to your groups, who is the wisest person you know and what makes them so wise? Who's the wisest person you know and what makes them so wise? I'm going to pray. We'll go into our small groups. I encourage you to come back next week and follow along in this series. I really think this has the opportunity, the ability to radically change your life if we start focusing less on our own experience and more on God's wisdom. So let me pray, and we'll go to our groups.